Thank you all for being here. This is Game-Changing Tech, elevating the fan experience in sports and entertainment. I am Joe Lemire. I am a senior writer at Sports Business Journal and have a very unique niche in the world. I'm one of the only sports technology writers and have been following the space for about 8 years pretty closely. But these people know a lot more than I do. So let me introduce Tanya and Nico from Globant, are sandwiching George Hanna. He is the CTO of the Los Angeles Clippers, and my company actually has an annual tech awards every year. And George, just last week, accepted our Technology Executive of the Year award. Congratulations again. You'll be hearing a lot about the reason why, and that name is Intuit Dome. But first, my saying their names is hardly much of an introduction, so I'll let them give a little more background as to who they are, what their role is, and how they got here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I know there's a lot of selection when it comes to things to do at South by, so we appreciate you being here, and hopefully you take something away from this that might inspire an idea or thought. My name is Tanya Salervand. I am part of the Globant team that's in charge of all of our entertainment sector. So it covers hospitality, leisure, and sports. So anything that has an experiential component to it. We talk about phygital experiences. So the physical experiences where digital enables, empowers, or creates some sort of memory outside of what you might see on stage or in an experience itself. Really excited to be here and looking forward to having this conversation.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. George Hanna, as Joe mentioned, the CTO for the Clippers. I've been with the organization for 4 years, actually 4 seasons. So in sports, we go by season. So this is my 4th season now with the organization. First role in sports, so came from Disney before that. So I was the CTO of Disneyland for a few years. Opened a new arena in Intuit Dome, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nico Avila. I'm CTO for Globant, leading our entertainment space, which basically means that I work very, very close with Tanya, and we will add media to the discussion there, which actually makes me a very happy person because if there is one thing that's worth spending long nights and pushing to change the envelope on is entertainment. It's something that we all can relate on. And happy to be sharing today some of the things that got us here.
Joe, could I jump in 1 second? Because I keep checking my watch, and now I feel like I have to explain. So I have an 18-year-old son. He just got into a car accident. My wife is on her way there. He's okay. I talked to him, but I am just checking my watch to make sure I don't need to get up. So I apologize. I'm not trying to be rude at all. This is super important to me, but so is he. So.
Yeah, no, by all means, if you need to step out, we certainly understand. While we do have you now, my kids are a bit younger, 8 and 5. Just took them to Disney World for the first time recently. Disneyland, Disney World, the happiest places on earth. Why would you leave that for sports? What was the vision outlined to you?
It's true. I did work at the happiest place on earth. So I'm a big sports fan. I loved basketball growing up and watching basketball. Obviously, all into technology. My entire career has been spent in technology. So learning about the opportunity to work in sports, in technology, for a person like Steve Ballmer. So those that don't know, Steve Ballmer owns the Clippers and decided many years ago to build a new arena in Intuit Dome, and that's what he was looking to bring me on board for. So I wasn't looking to leave Disney, but hearing more about the organization, learning more about Steve Gillian, who's our CEO, and the vision they had for this arena wasn't just a sports arena, right? It was they wanted to change how sports and even live events are experienced by fans, and they really had this notion of what fan experience can be, and it got me excited. And I went from no way I'm leaving to Disney, I'm just going to have some conversations with Steve Ballmer, to sounds pretty cool, to no way I cannot leave and go be a part of trying to make this happen. And so, I made the jump.
I've not met Steve Ballmer personally, but he seems very persuasive, very energetic, and very enthusiastic.
All key words to describe him, yes.
I think he lied. Actually, we know that he's a basketball fan, but we also know that he's a very strong churros fan. And he was so prominent about Disneyland selling churros that he wanted to find new opportunities for churros. And I think he gets credited for bringing churros to the menu in the Intuit Dome.
That's also true.
So as you're planning a new venue, or Globant also works with a number of other sports properties. We'll get to some of that a little bit more later: FIFA, F1, La Liga, and so on. But just sort of broadly, what have you found that sports fans in 2025 want?
That's a very loaded question. I think that there has been, I don't know, sports in general is having a moment in time. I think that it's always been something that brings people together. Some would argue it's like a religion. In fact, in some sports and in some countries, it is stronger than religion for people. It is a connector. It's an opportunity to be on the same side or maybe opposite sides, but fighting over something that you believe in and you can be a part of. Some people say if you can't play sports, you watch them very passionately. That's probably also true. I think that post-pandemic, we saw this resurgence of sports really taking center stage in many ways. It became an opportunity for people to come back out again, to connect again, to create spaces where they can experience things that they've had to do virtually or digitally for a number of months, maybe years. So I do think that that was a big impetus for why the fan experience became and is still incredibly relevant and important for sports. And thankfully, a lot of sports teams really took on that challenge. They said, we see that this is happening. We want to be a part of that revolution, let's call it. We want to really reinvent how the industry is thinking about sports, the fan experience, and making sure that loyalty becomes a part of it. So good fans are repeated fans. Repeated fans are fans that talk about their fanship. They attend events. They buy swag. They buy merchandise. They yell really loud. All of those pieces and parts were part of what is happening within the fan experience right now. And frankly, if you think about it, so many other pieces of our world, our ecosystem, whether it's in retail or it's in banking and some of these other experiences, have advanced so much when it comes to what that digital experience looks and feels like and how you are having a more frictionless experience overall, that it was only a matter of time for sports and some of the other industries to really get there because it's now expected. And I think actually what we're going to talk a little bit more about in this time frame is there's going to be more of that expectation even moving forward.
Yeah, I think that I wanted to hone in on, Tanya mentioned COVID as something that changed behavior, right? And it's funny, sometimes you remember and people were saying like, we're never going to get together again, we're not going to go to a concert again. And we actually got overloaded with digital content. We had the ability we go back to, I got to stick to whatever is in the TV today, to now I have the whole catalog of every streaming service that I can choose on. So you have more content than you have time, that you can ever have time. So I think people also started valuing their time in a different way and valuing being part of the collective, going to a venue, going to a concert, enjoying time with their friends as well. And that creates memories to the point that I think even beyond the perspective of the fan, when you talk to a CPG company, when you talk to a product company that's choosing where to spend their marketing dollars on, you're seeing that TV is actually having a run for its money from sports because people are really gravitating and have a ton of energy and attention in those times. So I think it builds up even for a more rich ecosystem for sports where technology can not only be something that they gotta do, but actually that's something that brings them a lot of value as well.
In a lot of sports, I probably spend more time around Major League Baseball than the others. There's a big push to have more social spaces, sort of bar spaces. They've actually had a chance to see Intuit Dome on the same day as going to a Mets-Dodgers playoff game and got a wonderful tour of all the renovations they've been doing at Dodger Stadium. And they shared that they actually tore out a lot of seats in order to have more space for people to move around. They sold more standing room tickets because that was sort of the response that they were getting from fans. Steve Ballmer, however, has a bit of a different vision and thesis. Maybe explain the thinking there.
Yeah, absolutely. So opening this building and building a venue for the organization for the Clippers was really about home court advantage. And so we talk about what home court advantage means. And there's data to suggest in an NBA game that's worth about a point or two, home court advantages. And part of that is, players sleep in their own bed and they drive their own cars and, they're in some sort of routine. So say that's about half. So that leaves about a point. That is tied to things that we can control, and that's the fan atmosphere, the environment, how loud it is, how much the home team hears the crowd behind them, or the visiting team doesn't, or the officials hear it. And so we really wanted our point. We really wanted the fans to get that point, and for those that follow NBA, a point makes the difference. Last night, we won by 1 point in overtime, and you better believe home court advantage helped make that happen. Kawhi's, jump shot also helped as well. But so we won our point in every game, and so that home court advantage drove getting fans in their seats cheering for the team, and that's what we wanted to create. So lots of technology things, and we'll talk about some of them that help make that happen. But we really want you in your seat, wearing our gear, showing up early, cheering loudly, and that's the fan experience we want to create. That doesn't mean you're in the concourse watching on a screen or sitting in the back of your suite or in a club or in sort of shared space outside. It's great, and lots of venues have that. Lots of new venues have that. That's not our North Star. That's not the venue that we wanted to create. Steve's vision was, we want our point. We're only going to get that if people aren't doing those other things and they're in their seats. So we didn't create that space. In fact, we do a lot of things that are maybe counter to what some venues do to help support that.
That same tour I had of Dodger Stadium, Jan Marie Smith's kind of a legend in baseball architecture. She actually was marveling. She was talking about how, I think by California code, in a stadium situation, you need to have about one bathroom for every about 70 people or so. Dodger Stadium had renovated, and she was very proud of the fact that it was about one of every 45. So it's a pretty good rate, quicker return. And what is it at Intuit Dome, George?
It's crazy. It's a lot more than that. Actually, funny story. When my first conversation with Steve during the interview process, about 5 minutes in, he asked me to give him an example where technology can help the fan experience. And I've been to many games and events all over, as I'm sure many of you have. And I said, that's easy, right? At halftime at a game, everybody leaves their seat, right? So everybody dumps out into the concourse, and you're either trying to get food or go to the bathroom. So it would be cool if I can just pull out my app and you just give me an arrow. Where is the closest bathroom to me with the shortest line? So you know where I am with my location. You can use computer vision for density or line management to figure out where the bathrooms near me have the most lines, and tell me which way to go that'll get me back to my seat the quickest. His answer was, I reject the premise of that idea. This was in the interview, by the way. So I'm like, sweet. So I'm not getting the job, but now I'm just talking to a guy named Steve Ballmer.
About bathrooms.
Yeah, about bathrooms. So I said, okay, why? He said, well, why is that a problem? I said, well, it's because there's a long line and I don't want to wait in a line. He's like, yeah, but that's not a problem. Why is that a problem? I said, well, because everybody wants to go to the bathroom at halftime. He's like, but that's not a problem. We know that. Why is it a problem? So he kept asking 5 whys. And it came down to, well, there aren't enough bathrooms. So he said, not only are there not enough bathrooms, they're not proportionally located where people are. So where we used to play, he said they've got the right number of bathrooms, but there's 16 sets of bathrooms in the upper concourse. There's 4 sets of bathrooms in the lower concourse. And the people are split 50-50. But it's way cheaper to have a bathroom up above. So he said, we're not going to do that. We're going to have 4 times the number of bathrooms. And he rattled off all the numbers, what code is, what we used to have. And they're going to be proportionally located to where people are. So in that example, I don't care which way you turn. Make a right, make a left, who cares? There's a bathroom nearby. There isn't going to be a line. I don't need technology to solve that problem. I solved it with the design of the building. What's your next idea? So we have a lot of bathrooms.
A lot. And Globant has been a part of implementing a lot of the technology there. If I recall correctly, I think Tanya was maybe a bit more involved at the beginning and then Nico later on, but maybe discuss how Globant helped bring some of these visions to life.
I can start, and then so we, like I mentioned earlier, we really thrive, I think, in this space of creating these memorable moments, these experiences that are not led by and or technology only, but how do you make sure that it's super integrated and it becomes part of your DNA? It's just how you operate as an organization. And so, I think one of the very first meetings that we had with George and myself, there was all these ideas and everything was we'd like to. Wouldn't it be cool if? That's really exciting. Never been done before. And I think we were just kind of like nodding along and taking a bunch of notes. And I think at the end, he said something like, "Are we crazy?" And the conversation led to, it sounds crazy because it's never been done before, but also things that have never been done before are where innovations come to life. It's where experiences really thrive. It's where people get really excited about something. So yes, you're crazy, but it's good crazy. So let's keep going down this path. And I think that's really a lot of the core of many of the things that have been done since that first day were really around exactly that. Is there are going to be times where this sounds ridiculous and people might actually laugh at us. In fact, I think we were in a conference where someone on stage was like, "Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous for someone to think about biometric entrance into a stadium." And they laughed on stage. And I think I texted George and I was like, "Uh-oh." But those were the types of moments that I think helped us think about, okay, the whys. Why is it ridiculous? Why would it work? Why would it not work? How can we make it better? And again, blood, sweat, and tears throughout the whole process. But it really was about keeping the North Star in mind, not being afraid of it. And I think there's a lot of startups that are probably here and folks who were really early in that phase. I mean, it was a startup. Well funded, but it was a startup in many ways because the ideas were free-flowing, challenging, intended to push the limits, still pushing the limits, but really at the end of it, I think turned into something that a lot of people are in awe of because they realize that those limits were meant to be broken and it was meant for us to go there because it's happening all around us. And I think there's a lot of examples of that.
I think that one of the reasons why we got involved at the beginning is because we know a lot about installing toilets and bathrooms. The reality is that it's interesting as we remember all of the decisions that we had to do, and Tanya was discussing how we had to decide what was the right solution for each problem. And the right solution for the Intuit Dome was not the right solution for a theme park, or it was not the same solution for a cruise line, right? So you have different scenarios. In other cases, you want to have, George was just alluding to searching the most available restroom. In many other cases, you have not only clubs that are open, you have mobile order. We could have had mobile order and do it like other people are doing it, but we thought the more important portion is actually reducing the line. So how do you reduce the line? Well, there's things that need to be solved on the operation, like having a menu that helps you get what you have close by. You don't have to tour around the building to find the food that you want. That's more on the business operation and what else. But then why don't we actually make it easier for the checkout time to be faster? Right? How do we actually can use frictionless doors and actually frictionless doors that connect you to your identity so that you can just come in and out in 17 seconds, right? And get back to your seat. If you have more flow of people getting into the store, you're gonna have more people spending time in the collective with their friends in the stadium, in the bowl, and actually like maybe participating in games, even if the game's not playing, like something that we do in the Halo, right? So it's finding the right solution for the particular use case. And I remember, I think it was GDC 2016, there is a talk, that's the Game Developer Conference, there's a talk by the NASA, it's called We Are the Space Invaders, and they're basically explaining how they spend $36 million to train every pilot, and every kid is learning to pilot a space fleet alone in his basement in a week. So there is something that they're doing wrong, and I think what games are doing is they're giving feedback to people and they're making the things that need to be easy, they're making it easy. So our mission to create that home court advantage was, let's make it easy for people to spend as much time, and let's reward them for being a fan as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, going to sporting events used to be a real hassle. I mean, I grew up in the Boston area, so the Red Sox are my frame of reference there. And so even when granted, it's a much older building, but there are only so many restrooms even available. I've heard stories about, families would tell their daughter, like, we're not going to give you anything to drink during this game because on this side of the building there's only one girl's restroom and the lines are going to be too long, so you're just going to have to tough it out. I mean, that's just what fans got accustomed to and were willing to accept, seemingly. That may not have been the best example, though. But I also had the fortune and misfortune of going to a lot of those early 2000s Red Sox Yankee playoff games at the old Yankee Stadium. And my brother and I, who I went, we would go an hour before the game would start just because the security line would be outrageous. And granted, arch rivals, it was a post 9/11 world. I mean, it was definitely like the extreme example, but it was not that uncommon to have really long lines everywhere else you go. And Tanya referred to biometric entrance. Why don't we have a little level set as to what exactly is the Intuit Dome entry experience?
Yeah. So when you one of the premises of the building, and we could talk a little bit about this later, is everybody has their own ticket and their own account. So let's say Nico, great guy, he's going to buy 100 of you all tickets to the next game. In most venues, including ours last year, as long as we all showed up with Nico, he would just swipe his phone 100 times. We'd all walk into the venue together. In our venue, that's not what happens. Nico has to transfer the 99 tickets to each of you. You each create an account. So there's work up front that each of you have to do to come to our venue that you wouldn't have to do in any other venue. One of those is an optional step to give us your selfie. We call it your game face. And with your game face, it's your biometric, your face is tied to your account. You can then have your phone in your pocket for your entire experience, from parking, going through security, coming through the main entrance to get your ticket redeemed, to buying things throughout the venue. We use your game face at all those locations where we want to or need to know who you are to, again, take your ticket or charge you for something. And it's optional, right? You can decide to do it. You can opt in the beginning. You can change your mind and do it later. You can do it and then delete it. But what we found is that take rate has been phenomenal, exceeded our collective expectations. So something like before a concert or an event, 50% of the people that come to our venue have enrolled their Game Face ID, which if you would have asked me before, I'd say that would have been at the top end of any estimate we had. And by the time the event is over, whether it's a concert or a Clipper game, that number's closer to 75 or 80% have enrolled their Game Face. So 80% of the people, by the time the event's over, would have seen kind of what having your Game Face enrolled means and how it enhances your experience, and then they enroll on the spot before they leave. And so that's how it works in our venue. And again, it's not just at main entry as we talked about, but it's throughout the venue.
I was just going to add, I think that's really interesting because what you alluded to is around adoption and the fact that coming into an event, they may not have adopted the technology, but coming out, they did, which seems counterintuitive. Why would you on your way out think, I need to do this? But again, it goes back to the whole full cycle of an experience and the loyalty aspect of it. They know they're coming back. So let me prepare myself now while I'm in an event, but also knowing the next time I come, I'm not going to have to wait in that long line. Actually, we did this on purpose. This is like A/B testing, like major FOMO, where you have two lines, and the one on the left is just everyone using their tickets like they would normally on their phones, and the one on the right, it's people just selfie, game face, walk through. And I think the first couple of times, many of us were just standing around as observers, and you can see people like, what? Why are they going in? Or do they have VIP passes? And, we'd sneak up behind them and say, no, but if you put in your game face, you can zoom right in. And they would automatically do it. That was a big part of it, right? I mean, you can probably talk to that more than I can, but just the whole idea of adoption of a new technology that people might have thought was a little ridiculous, but now is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's, they have to know that they could trust us with the data and privacy concerns, and are we encrypting the data, and are we selling, like all those things are table stakes, and they have to be able to rely on that. But obviously it has to also be worth their while. And I think 30% of people essentially do it at some point while they're in the venue to get the benefit of it in real time, I think speaks to that.
Yeah, and certainly California has some more stringent data privacy laws, so if you're able to do it there. But that's sort of across sports, that it becomes this two-way contract that fans are willing to share more data as long as they're getting something that they see value in return. And teams and leagues and media companies are learning a lot more about their fans and who's actually in the building, because to your point about the swiping of a ticket, typically it's either a parent or a boss who's like buying the tickets, and thus, like I know in Major League Baseball, for instance, it has this reputation of a graying sport. Many older fans, the Atlanta Braves, who I think because they're a public company are a bit more forthcoming with some of their data, they actually have strong evidence to suggest that their actual average age is in the upper 30s. I think it was about 38 as of a year or two ago. And so you're learning a lot more about your fans. And what does that allow you to do when you have this much more data on your fans? Do you want to go first, Nico?
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's amazing that sports organizations in general don't have that much information about the people that are coming to the venue. In many cases, they're even forfeiting the knowing the fan whatsoever. Now, imagine in any other business that you don't know your fans, you don't know who's buying, you don't know what kind of things that are important for them. You've seen other organizations that have made a lot of strides in that, and that's paid off. But it's because they've seen technology not as a cost center, as something that's going to be costing money that I got to do it so that it runs, but actually something that's going to be enable me to connect with them. So basically, if I know that if I don't know that somebody has come several times and I want to run a promotion for them to get ticket for the next season, I don't know who I should send emails to. That's why you see such big growth on loyalty programs in the retail world and in other industries, because the cost of acquisition for a customer is super high. And if you know that you have a customer and you can activate them and talk to them, it becomes a lot easier for them to improve the performance of the business. In sports in general, you have a fan. It's not even like, it's not a customer, it's a fan. It's somebody that comes and enjoys the game. So you can actually, if you're going to invite somebody over, you might as well bring in the people that have come several times, that have had a great effort. And understanding them, it also offers you, well, maybe you got to cater the menu differently. You got to figure out different things that they're needing. So I think in that sense, I'm amazed by the fact that other organizations have not seen it. I think that everybody's going to benefit from what Clippers have done in creating some of this technology, can help other venues as well.
Anything to add, George?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you said it. And this group probably represents a whole bunch of different industries. Kind of doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you don't know your fan, if you don't know your customer, it's almost like I'd flip the question on its head. Like, what can you do with that information? It's like, there's so much you can't do. It's like it unlocks just almost an infinite amount of possibilities. And then one other way I'll sort of flip that a little bit. It's not just that we know our fans, but let's say you've come to 4 games, right? And now we know that. But you know what? You're not. Every game you've come to is when we play the Sacramento Kings. That doesn't make you a Clipper fan. You've come a lot, and you've come to this other team, so that likely makes you a Sacramento Kings fan. And so now we know, right, who you are and attribute fandom, and that also helps us, right, as an organization.
I used to go to all the Boston area sports events, in the New York City area, and when I'd go to Devils games, I would be that guy who would only buy Bruins Devils tickets, and without fail, for years, the Devils would call me trying to get me into a larger package, and every year I would tell them on the phone, nope, I'm coming to this one game or maybe 2 games, and that's it. But they didn't have that sort of data. But one of my other favorite features of Intuit Dome is parallel reality. And I had a chance to do this myself. You put my game face in, and you walk up, and there's a video board that sees my face, and it gives me a personal greeting in a crowded concourse. And the Misapplied Sciences is the company that designed this, and they figured out a way to beam the pixels very precisely so that, say, Tanya and I are both on the concourse. I see "Welcome to Intuit Dome Joe." She sees "Welcome to Intuit Dome Tanya." And we don't see each other's messages. Like, I would have to really violate the social contract and norms of how close I am to her in order to be able to see her message. But to George's point about knowing patterns of behavior, when I go to a sporting event, my 8-year-old son has to have the biggest popcorn he could possibly find. And so if my account shows that I've bought popcorn at every single game, that board might just say, "Welcome to Intuit Dome Joe." My ticket's also part of the account, so it can give me wayfinding directions, take the second escalator up. But it also might say, "Hey, here's a 20% coupon for your next popcorn purchase at Intuit Dome." And you start to have those sort of surprises and delights to really make people feel seen. I mean, just how important is a personalized experience? I mean, in all industries, but especially sports.
Oh gosh, 100%. And it's not new. I think anyone who's been working in any of these industries, it's customization, customer 360, personalization. That's been around for years. But I think that we are just getting to the point where it used to be content is king. Data is queen, and she's taking over, because the more you know, the more you can do, and the more you do it safely, of course, keeping in consideration the opt-in versus an opt-out, keeping in consideration that there are rules and mandates around that, but how you can take that information and personalize it to every individual. And if an individual comes with children, to be able to have your teammates be a part of that customization, because they know your daughter or son loves popcorn or mine cotton candy, that they know that they can create that experience for you, I think is truly the transformation here. So beyond all the technology that we are talking about, technology that you see in this space, all of it, I think, is just sitting on this layer of data, and how that data is captured, gathered, and distributed, and also customized, so those experiences become incredibly personal. And look, frankly, everybody sitting in this audience, I would bet on the fact that 99.99% of you use Face ID on your phones for a lot of things. Logging into your phone, buying things, purchasing things through Apple Pay, whatever it might be. All of that information then feeds you information. Then you go on Instagram and you're like, oh gosh, that's so weird. I was just talking about those new Adidas shoes and now I'm getting, yes, of course you are. So we're used to it because we've been a part of it for a long time, whether we accept it or not, or acknowledge it or not. Now it's really about creating those experiences, because guess what? I did want those Adidas shoes, and I'm glad they gave me the coupon, because now I bought it. That is what we're trying to do, is create those experiences that, again, are memorable moments. They're touch points. They're moments in time that are touch points, but all that information means something. And it means that you can then, to George's point earlier, never have to take out your phone when you walk into this space. And you're getting all of these great perks as a part of the process, how we build loyalty in, how you make sure that you're getting the things that you want when you want them, and not just random feeds of, do you want to buy more tickets to these games? No, I don't, because I don't actually care for that team. I'm here for this. That is what's going to make it really special. That's when people want to come back and see more and do more. But that's me as a user. What about you from a tech leader perspective?
The only thing that I would add is, I mentioned gaming before, right? So, and you asked how can you actually make sense of the data. Reality is that the more that you know, the more that you can tailor them for something that's valuable for them. And at the end of the day, that's the premise and of all the technology that was built. It's about making lives easier for people. I want to come in the venue faster. George was saying you don't want to break the step. They want to. You need them to just be able to walk in. I want to make it easier to get a hot dog and get back to my seat. And something that we're seeing in the case of product realities is that people are really enjoying being recognized for the person that's here, not for the persona. Because you could say, like, hi, 15-year-old, 30-year-old male, right? It's reality is that they actually connect to the fact that they feel like they're a scene fan, and that actually creates a lot of emotional connection as well.
And certainly what Intuit Dome has done is, as someone who goes to a lot of sports industry conferences, it is something that gets name-checked a lot. But I know you're always evolving. Maybe give us a hint of some of the things that you're still working on and that are on the horizon?
Yeah, I think we, again, in the name of the fan experience, or the North Star, I think we're always looking at where we can incentivize the behavior to get that home court advantage, to get that fan in their seat cheering. So, for example, we have Josh, who's actually in the audience. Him and I went to the Netherlands to check out this piece of technology. It's kind of the size of an access point, like a wireless access point, and they're directional microphones that read the decibel levels at the seat. So, can't detect what you're saying at all, obviously, just how loud you are. And so we want fans to be loud, and we want to reward that behavior. So we're now reading the decibel levels. You have to opt into this, by the way, but if you opt in to our loyalty program and you give us that information, we'll know how loud you are. And so we're collecting that data now, and we're just starting. Literally last week, I think, was the first game, we started to reward the loudest fan of the game, and they got something.
What decibel level?
What's that?
Do you remember what the decibel level was?
It was over 100. I want to say 105. The decibel. And it's, there's a bunch of, we got into these sort of mathematical debates, and I was sick that day in school when they taught statistics. And is it over a 10-second period, or is it just one time? And what if they sneezed, and does that count? And so, but cheering for the team, right? And we tie that to NBA data. To say, are you cheering when Kawhi scores, or are you cheering when somebody on the opposing team scores? Because we don't want to reward that behavior. In fact, we just assume you stay home and watch the game from there. So we're being very cautious, right? We're collecting that data, and for those that have opted in, we're being very cautious. But we really want to incentivize behavior. Can we do things like, oh, you've got 3 James Harden jerseys, and there's a 4th one that you don't have, and we know that, and we want to market. Sure, we can do that, and we can sell you another jersey. That's not kind of our first goal. Our first goal is North Star, get you in your seat, cheer for the team, and incentivize that behavior. And there's a bunch of cool technology, right? So with that, by the way, with that decibel level, we're almost getting to the point, some amazing sound engineers to say, we detected you were yelling and cheering sitting down, and there's a difference between when you're cheering sitting down versus when you're cheering sitting up, and can we reward you for cheering and standing up or jumping up and down and things like that. And again, we have a super fan in Steve Ballmer, and that's the behavior we want to reward. So I think continuing to, whether it's technology or the data that we have or more bathrooms, whatever, in the name of that fan experience and that North Star, we're continuing to evolve, and so many cool things out there that we're playing around with and we're looking at that it never stops coming our way, for sure.
We've talked pretty much exclusively about the venue experience at this point. So maybe let's shift to the at-home fan. And whether it's the FIFA app or La Liga, well, it used to be La Liga Tech, is now Sporty, and how do you think about serving fans who are home, and making sure that they have as good of an experience as they can? What's new?
Yeah, that's a great question, because again, willing to bet that the majority of you, think about it now, actually. What is your absolute favorite sport to watch, and what's your favorite team of that sport? And it's highly likely you don't live either in that city, state, or maybe country anymore. So I think that idea of taking that experience outside of the space, because many fans, and very avid and passionate fans of certain sports and teams, it could be that they go to that game once a year, maybe if that. So that experience of keeping that continuity, making sure, and this feeds to many of you in a marketing role or otherwise here, marketing and sales roles, is how do we have this campaign that lasts forever, that allows you to have access to information? We still know who you are as a fan or a customer or a guest. We can still feed you the information that you need or want in that particular time. And you don't actually have to be at an event. Now, some of the things that you mentioned, how we're able to do that with streaming, how we're able to do that with data collection, real-time data. So if you know that you are a fan of a certain team in a certain league, of a certain player, and you want to get information on that particular person throughout the game. And by the way, I think the other interesting part of this is, even outside of the game, I think many of you know that there's a lot of convergence happening with athletes and media and entertainment, athletes and luxury and retail. People want to know what you're eating for breakfast. What was your workout that morning before the game? You played really well that day. Did you do something different before you showed up? Did your training program change? So it's becoming way more personal, very customized to every individual, but it again expands beyond the in-venue experience. So yes, there's a lot of streaming. For many of you who stream games on your phones or other digital experiences, that is an experience in itself. And the ability to do that with real-time data, real-time feeds, to be able to monitor and track is actually incredibly important, because then you feel like you're part of the game even when you're not there. Actually, you should talk about the living room experience that Steve wanted to create. It really is about how do we do what we do when you're sitting at home, in your living room, on your couch, comfortably watching game, and do that regardless of where you are, in venue, at home, at a friend's house, watching it socially. There's a lot of convergence, I think, happening on that. So carrying that experience outside of just the venue is a big part of that, whether it's through the mobile app, of course, doing it online, the web, but also just that feeding of that information when you want it. Goes back to data is queen. And that is the key part of this.
I just add one thing. We have this concept in our marketing team that talks about the share of life. And share of life means that every organization is trying to be part of their customers' journey, right? And in many cases, when you think of an organization that's trying to connect with their consumers, their outreach is marketing, and they're thinking of campaigns, and one campaign after the other, trying to make a push and get out there. I think that the ones that have really mastered technology as a tool are talking about a journey and being part of the journey and being present in the journey before they come, when they came to visit you, and staying in your life after that. And it's not just by wanting to be there, it's about creating elements that add value for your consumer, whether it's actually simplifying, making you work a little bit before you come to the stadium so you have a faster, more enjoyable time there, whether it's planning ahead of your visit and relieving the tension that I have of I don't know what it's going to be when I get there. Can I know where I got to park? Can I know what I'm going to be doing throughout the day? And then also being present afterwards and making them remember the element. I think we're creating experiences and we're creating memories. And sports in particular has a very strong opportunity to do that because they are such an emotional attached part of our life, right? So I think that there is a lot of value there, not only on the instance and the visit, but actually on expanding the presence and the share of your life that they're represented.
We've seen pretty much every major sports league invest in full player tracking systems in the ball and puck as well. And, it's, MLB, they call their StatCast, the NFL is next gen stats and so on. These power, all the advanced data that you see, which helps the players, but it also, fan experience. You see a lot of these animated altcasts. If you saw the NFL do the Simpsons game, that was all powered by this advanced tracking data. What other sort of investments do teams and leagues need to be making, whether it's that or other experiences related to that or in other areas to make sure that they're serving their fans at home?
To serve their fans, you're saying?
Yeah, at home, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think those altcasts were a great. They sort of look cool, right? But and then it sort of moved on, right? So I think gaming has become a big, not in California, obviously, but in many other parts of the country. So the ability to put up prop bets or whether actual money's on the line or bragging rights with your friends. And so, on NBA's League Pass, for example, it's watch party, and then you can play games with the people that you're watching a game with, and you can guess on the next play or what the player is going to do and things like that. So I think it's sort of that interactivity between fans amongst each other. We talked about maybe having interactivity between fans at home and fans in the arena playing games, and so we're dabbling in that area. But I think, and maybe Tanya mentioned it earlier. Fans needs change and they evolve. So I think now, it's at least at the NBA, they're seeing lots of bite-sized consumption of a game as opposed to somebody sitting for 2.5 hours watching it. So that the consumption is changing. How do we meet fans where they are and then interact with them in a way that it's for highlights of their favorite player or the top 10 plays of the game or whatever it is, and change that. Not that watching a full game goes away by any means, but adding to the experience for those that are taking and consuming it differently.
And I think every opportunity to participate is great. You have things that you can do, companions, like not only watching and creating better content, but actually like you can have a fantasy that plays off. We just released a fantasy for one of the top leagues to really create engagement and have people feel that they have a participation. Participation is actually key online. As Tanya said, some of us were not as gifted to be really playing, but we wish to. And even I think that there are some other trends that are changing. I got very close to F1 lately, not because we were working with them, but actually like I just naturally honed in. And when I was thinking about it the other day, it's like, well, I actually bought a sim racing rig a couple years ago. I had a son, and I was like, I'm not going to have time to go racing elsewhere. So, and reality is that, by the way, I couldn't use it for like 3 years because apparently I had a kid. But reality is that what I realized is that all the time that I spent racing, I spent time watching sports as well. Because now I can go and see my own telemetry and seeing how I get more of I'm part of this as well. So anything that a sports organization can do to make them feel part of the game is important. So more to the gamification aspects and the missions that George was mentioning before.
I was just going to say, this brings up a really good point about next-gen fans. So we talk a lot about fan experience. We talk a lot about advancing it and evolving it as we go. But as we all know, every generation is consuming content very differently, and especially in the sports space. So, your point around highlights, just getting the data that they want to see. I see that in my own son, who's a fanatic sports follower as an 11-year-old. He likes to have the game on the screen, but he just wants the highlights on his, apps or whatever it is that he's looking at that particular time. So how do we create this outside of venue experience that is multi-generational, I think is quite important. Because you had mentioned kind of MLB fans, they're seeing this transition happening from who used to be the traditional, who'd go there, who'd put on their headphones and actually listen to the radio as they were watching the games, passing that down to the next generation. And then what comes next? How do you make that experience so incredible and those moments so memorable that they want to go to the Intuit Dome? They want to become loyal, avid, longtime LA Clippers fans. How do you make sure that happens by creating these experiences that to them is very generationally appropriate, what they're used to right now, how they want to engage and interact digitally, how they want to just walk through and, as most kids do, they just want to go to the fridge, pick up their Coke and walk out. They don't want to stand there and wait for somebody to come pay for it. Like, all of those moments, I think, are just little delighters in that journey that do advance that experience and do make that next group or generation want to be a part of it and not just sit at home and watch it on their phone, which obviously we still do, but it's not the only way.
And broadcast used to, of course, be a one to all. And then now you're seeing, with the Amazon on Thursday Night Football, you have one to some. You have a few different options. You can have your next-gen stats feed. You can have the regular feed, different languages. And some new AI translation tools are going to allow languages to explode pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. But I've talked to some people in the industry who also, because of that tracking data and the digital interactivity, pretty soon you're going to be able to have this truly one-to-one. You can be there's a Chelsea FC. They actually, in their app for some of their games, you're able to select exactly which data streams you want to see, which kind of graphics. There's a lot of interactivity, and it's not too many years down the line where, say, you're watching NFL Red Zone and you got your fantasy team inputted into your device, and you want to know how your players are doing. The machine will be able to highlight your player whenever they're on the field, and we're getting to that point where we're not too many years away from that sort of experience as well. And so, George, I'm curious what you have in the Clippers app. What are you do? What else is available to those who are at home?
Yeah, so we do. So we were the first NBA team to have a direct-to-consumer streaming product. So Clipper Vision was launched 3 years ago, two and a half years ago. So you can watch Clipper games, and you can watch them through the NBA app, obviously, or through our app directly. So. And with that, we've just started to sort of scratch the surface. Now, I think 7 or 8 NBA teams have their version of a streaming product. And so that interactivity, again, the watch with friends, some of the sort of interactivity and amongst the fans watching at the same time. I think we have a couple different modes as well. So shot probability. So a little bubble on top of every player that says this player at this moment in this spot against this defender, the likelihood if they take this shot, it'll go in. So we show that. That's one of the feeds we show. We have sort of an infinite amount of data like that, right? It's a Thursday on a back-to-back, and the last time, and so we can just sort of ad nauseum go into those things. We have a feature in our app now. You can say, Nico Batum, he's my favorite player, and I love it. I love to watch him play against right-handed defenders on Tuesdays. Give me those highlights, and we'll generate a highlight reel for you that meet that criteria. I don't think anybody's ever said that. But Nico Batum's my favorite player. I want to see all his best, whatever, three-pointers from the corner. And so, again, trying to find, and some of it sticks, some of it's like, yep, Steve's the only one that uses that feature, and we're going to find a different one. And so using technology, but also meeting fans where they are. And I think those are, it's kind of the amount of data we're collecting. So Hawkeye is the tracking system used in every NBA arena. Soon you'll be able to even say, I want to look at the game, not just I want to follow Kawhi Leonard around. I want to see the game from Kawhi Leonard's point of view, right? And so following sort of his perspective as he's running up and down the court. And so lots of neat features essentially that exist to enhance whatever you are into as a fan.
And what do you see as for anyone, the promise of some of these more immersive technologies, the Apple Vision Pros of the world, Meta certainly scaling down its product, from the Ray-Ban glasses to some of the Quest Pros. Do you see a future that fans are really leaning into that?
Yeah, I think that even on I think a couple of years ago we went through the round of metaverse, and then today some of that, to an extent, died off. I don't see a scenario where our kids are not, and we ourselves are not living in a version of that, consuming all of the type of content in that way in a couple of years. Reality is that the misconception was that it was all going to be about VR. Reality is that you have different windows to something, to a universe, and that universe might be happening in VR. That happenings might be happening. You might have a stream of what's happening on VR and watch it on a TV. You might be actually watching as the stats. So I think that as technology and connectivity work together to make it more accessible, it's unavoidable that we're going to start to see different experiments that help us figure out what's the way in which people prefer to consume it. I'm sure we've all seen like F1 where you're seeing that in VR, like the truck in VR and the cameras that are following each car. Even some of that you're doing today in your app. Like I have an app that shows me the stats and the sectors, and if it's purple or green or yellow, and then at the same time I'm watching the live feed, and in another device I'm watching the camera on the car, the racer that I want to see. So we're seeing, to that extent, the multitude of feeds that we can consume. And as consumers, I think that we're already consuming all of those feeds, and we're ready to take them all together. And we have little attention to just one of them. So we actually are consuming several of them. Connectivity, latency are things that need to improve. 5G is definitely helping in that front. There's a lot of things that need to come together for that experience to live to the hype. But reality is that I don't see a scenario where in a couple of years we're not really leaps ahead of where we're at today.
Yeah, there's a company called immersive.io that created an Apple Vision Pro experience for F1 where you can have the full broadcast as large as you want it, but they also have a full rendering of the entire race course below you, so you can get that impossible view of like standing over and watching as all the racers go around, and it's sort of mind-blowing what's now possible. And there was also at our SBJ conference last week, one of the honorees, the award winners, was Lap of Legends. There was it was a one-time promotional thing, but certainly you can see where it might have legs. They took, I think it was Logan Sargent, but they had an F1 driver race on an actual physical track, and they had AI recreations of drivers from the past all sort of racing alongside him. And you can, that's... it doesn't even have to be a competition. It could be someone, for fitness going for a nice jog, and you could have your favorite marathon runner aside you, although they would probably lap you a few times. But you could have maybe just like in other industries, a museum tour guide where it's an AI recreation of Ben Franklin. I don't know why he's the first one that came to mind, but he's walking along with you. What are maybe some other digital experiences that you see in the near future?
Yeah, I think retail is going to be a big one. Retail has kind of gone through its transformation in many ways, from obviously the e-commerce stages to the marketplaces, and now physical in store. And it's already, there's a lot of tech in that space thinking about how we are enabling or empowering the retail experience. Try before you buy. Look at it in your room. Make sure that it fits, because I have a tendency of buying things that don't actually fit in my mind size-wise. They make sense, and then they show up, and I'm like, oh, that's for my daughter's dollhouse. So there are things like that I think will really enhance those experiences when it think about even beyond that. And I think sometimes we think tech and we're like, oh, big tech, let's get AI in here and figure it out. No, just little things. If you think about patient experience, how many times have you gone to a doctor and had to fill out your medical forms 15 times and then give your medical card yet again, and then you go in the back and you have to do it yet again because they have to confirm that it's you. And that's like a big example. I mean, we've talked to companies that do photography for yearbooks, and even they struggle with, well, sometimes the kid shows up and is behind the camera and he says his name was Jeff, and then he leaves and we're like, oh wait, there's 25 Jeffs and we're not sure exactly, does he match this Jeff or that Jeff? And they're trying to figure out who he is, but he's a kid. So there's a lot of those moments that feel like small moments where technology can really improve that experience for people, patients, parents, consumers anywhere, that I think sometimes we forget about, because those are the ones that actually we experience almost every day in some capacity. How do we enhance those with some of these technologies and these capabilities that, again, are small delighters but mean big things in the grand scheme of things? They don't always have to be a robot that serves me coffee. We can do other things.
I should say, I think the passion of Steve being a super fan and wanting fans to really enjoy is a gift for us, because he helped us realize and find the landing spot for a vision on how technology can be changing our experience, and of course kudos to the whole Clippers organization. Not only George is here, but actually everybody that pulled in, Gillian and all the team that pulled in to make this happen. Because reality is that it took a ton of effort, but that's, I think, once you start seeing the things that you see there, you cannot unsee them. And I normally give the case like, you get your ID for Into Dome, you just don't need to download your ticket every time that you go. Just do it once and you're fine. And every time that I go I gotta take a plane. I fly a lot. Every time that I go take a plane and I gotta download my ticket, I was like, why? Why would I? They know more about me than my wife. I'm flying every week. They should know that with my ID, I don't need to get a ticket themselves. And even the way that access for GameFest works on entrance, I think it's more like a toll. Traditional ticketing is I go pay a toll. What you have in TSA right now, it's more like a gated community. You gotta stop, be recognized, open. This is more like a tollway and enabling people to free flow. And I think those scenarios, as Tanya was saying, are gonna each in their individual use case are gonna be landing in many scenarios that are beyond sports. And sports is the best place to innovate in that sense and get a technology that's gonna be ubiquitous and can really help sort many use cases, because people get used to that. Your time in the venue is really short, and you got to make the best of it.
So, George, if you go back to Disneyland, what do you change? Knowing what you know now, how would you enhance the Disneyland experience?
That's a tough question to answer.
Don't trade Mickey for Kuwait.
Yes, that's right. I think one of the things that I think Disney does really well, and I think it carried over here is, Disney really focused on the guest experience, and we focused on the fan experience. So the technology is amazing. We've talked about a lot of it. There's a lot more. But what are you trying to do? What problem are you trying to solve? What experience are you trying to deliver? And it's easy. Eddie Q was on a panel at NBA Tech Summit a couple weeks ago, and there were a bunch of sort of heavy hitters on this panel, and he spoke as a consumer. And he talked about how, I think it was finding games on TV. He's like, I don't know where to watch my team anymore. They're on so many apps. So if you never lose sight of the fan, of the consumer, of the thing that you're trying to do all this for, there's a lot you can do. And I think Disney did a great job. It does a great job, and will continue to do that, as does Intuit Dome. So sort of you keep your eye on the prize, on the North Star, and there's a lot of ways in which you get distracted. Again, maybe it's a technology solve, maybe it's putting more bathrooms. You're trying to have them not wait in line to get to their seat, and there's a bunch of ways to solve that problem. And so we didn't focus on the ways and the line management and the density. We focused on, we want you back in your seat, and how do we solve that problem? So as long as we continue to do that, and as long as companies like Disney continue to focus on the fan or the customer experience, I wouldn't say they can't get it wrong, but they're much more likely to get it right if they do that.
We are unfortunately down to our final minute, so just we're going to a quick hitter down the row. What's one thing that will, in the near future, that we will see, or that at least that you would hope to see in the fan experience?
Something different than we're already seeing?
Yeah.
I think that we are on the path to, we talked about data and personalization. We're on the path to getting there, but we're not quite 100% there. So some of the things that you even talked about, wouldn't it be great if I walked in and, the parallel reality screen knew it was my birthday, wished me happy birthday, and gave me an offer that, enhanced my experience, upgraded my seats, gave me something special. Those types of things, we're getting there. And I think that's where, all of this data and information that we're talking about is going to get us there. So I think that's going to be an exciting next step.
The problem of this industry is that you cannot speak of the things that you know. So reality is, I think that in many cases you see a disjointed experience. Like your ticketing experience is nothing like your retail, and your streaming is different. So I think getting that connection is going to make a big dent on the fan and how they feel treated as a person that's known.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered it. We set out to into a dome, making everybody that walked into our building, whether it was the fan or the referee or the opposing team or whomever they were, feel like we built that building for them. And as Tanya said, we've done tremendous things and great strides. There's still a ways to go to make it feel like every person that walks in, for every event, for any purpose. You're a stagehand setting up for a concert. We want you to feel like we built this building so you can do your job easier, and for the fans. And so from a fan experience perspective, imagine if every place you went, that was the lens they looked at to create that experience for you. I think some people are doing it, and some people are doing it better than others, but I think moving towards that direction will be great.
Yeah, well said, in a perfect way to end. So, all right. Well, so anyway, so for Tanya, George, Nico, thank you very much for your insights. I've been Joe. You guys have been great. Very much appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.